All right. So, hello, and welcome back to the Don Gringo Opinion or Opportunity channel. And today I got Sky Harris. He's a leadership man extraordinaire, airplane pilot, skydiver, you name it, he does it. And you're how old?
64, Don.
64, author, what, 1, 2, 3, 20 times? How many books you got out there now?
2 books.
Two books. So let's introduce yourself, because I'm going to introduce you in that way. I mean, the research I've done, and you show me you're just like flying planes and jumping out of them. So I don't know where to go from there. So,
Well, I'm essentially a motivational speaker. I talk to people. Mostly, I talk to managers or new managers who've taken on new responsibilities and try to help them overcome their internal fear of failure. And I actually do a workshop specifically on the leadership challenge, which is, it can be very challenging and both extremely rewarding to take on leadership. But if you don't do it the right way, if you try to manage people instead of leading them, it can be drudgery. It can be horrible.
so how the heck did you get into this whole leadership? I want to be a motivational speaker. I want to teach people to lead, but I mean, I think the only thing I saw so far is you lead people jumping out of planes. So how did we get to Sky Harris, 64 years old? We're going to teach the world how to jump out of planes, but also lead a Fortune 500 company or better.
Well, jumping out of airplanes has mostly been a hobby. I put myself through college as a teaching skydiving and running a small parachute center. But I graduated from college as an engineer. I was an engineering officer in the Merchant Marine for a number of years. And from there, I led a team of engineers doing startups in power plants and water treatment plants and things like that. From there, I became a consulting engineer, and I basically went out as a consultant, and I oversaw the startups of different power plants for different municipalities and groups like that. After that, I started my own business, and I've had. I guess I lost track. I started my own business, my own construction business, and I built light commercial and numerous residential properties as well. And I had a team of people working for me at that time. And so being a leader has always been kind of part of what I do. On the sidelines, I've always flown airplanes and jumped out of them. So currently I have 3 jobs. I'm a motivational speaker and trainer. I'm on the weekends. I'm the chief pilot at a local parachute center here in Portland, Oregon. And I manage 5 other pilots in that capacity so that we have all the days of the week covered year round. It's a little slow here in the winter, but it gets real busy in the summer. We haul jumpers 6 days a week.
Wow.
And then on the, on the third arm is I still do some construction consulting. I speak to people and advise them about commercial property.
But at 64, you think you'd be 64, 2 books, motivational. I mean, I figured it's time to slow down, right? I mean, time to slow down.
No.
No?
No. What a horrible thought. I really can't imagine it. My grandfather was an orthodontist. He practiced until his 80s. He was actually the founder of pediatric dentistry. My father was an orthodontist. He's the only person in my family that I know of who actually retired. At 78, he quit practicing orthodontia and became a gardener and a golfer, and he just kind of chased his pursuits that way. He was always busy and active, but he didn't do anything professionally after that. My grandmother on my mother's side was she was on the board of directors of 5 companies when she died at 88. It's just not in our DNA to stop.
I guess not. So
well, there's so much joy in being productive. I just can't. I personally have a need to be productive, and I get nothing but joy from doing all these different things. I can't imagine stopping.
Hey, to each their own. I mean, I just where did this philosophy come from? So all of a sudden you own multiple businesses, you got multiple irons in the fire. You decide I want to be a motivational speaker, but I'm going to write a book. So talk about the first book and what went into that. How did we go from Scott Harris business owner to Scott Harris author?
Well, when the pandemic hit year and a half ago, I'd been thinking about this book for a while, and I just said, well, things are going to slow down. I'll do it now. Once started, I couldn't stop. I had a work slow down for about 5 or 6 weeks. And then ever since then, I've been busier than I've ever been in my life. But once I started, I couldn't stop. My motivational book, Leap Forward, is marginally autobiographical. And essentially what it does is it takes the reader through many of the different things that I've done in my life and the lessons that I learned from that and what you can take from it to apply to other situations. Mostly it's about facing challenge and how to overcome your, the things that you tend to use against yourself to hold yourself back from performing at your highest level. I like to think of myself as human performance enhancement.
Okay. So we go through the pandemic. You decide you wrote that book, and now we're on to book number 2. So where did the transition happen? I mean, you didn't have a lot of time for book 1 to be out. So all of a sudden we're going to go from
Right.
1 to 2?
Right. Well, the other book is a tech. I actually started it first, but I finished it second. It's a technical book about maintenance of commercial property. And it's something I worked on. It's a little long and it covers all kinds of commercial property. And it's something I've worked on for a number of years. And I'm very happy to have it out there and for sale on Amazon, like the other book. But Leap Forward is kind of more of a labor of love. It really makes me happy to have that out there. And there's a lot of great information in it that anybody can use to help them face the challenges that we face every day. Even personal challenges.
I'm just trying to think. So in a pandemic, when things are slowing down and the world's going crazy, you decide that you're going to write a book and tell people, forget your fears, just go do whatever the hell you want to do. Right? You're going to make it happen. You're going to tell them how to make it happen when the world's gone crazy.
Right. Time to shove into a higher gear. And that's the way to face challenge is to not get bogged down in the peripheral nonsense that's holding you back. I mean, you have to assess your situation and look at all the pros and cons and how you want to deal with stuff. You need to attack things with a plan. But once you've made that final decision to move forward, you have to stop holding yourself back. You have to dive into it, and you have to not hold yourself back by cheating yourself out of your best performance, and keep second guessing all your plans and your actions.
So without giving up a whole lot of the book, I mean,
I couldn't give it up in a half hour. It's okay.
Half hour, it doesn't matter. I don't think you get through the whole book regardless. I'm just saying though, if someone wanted to go get this book, I mean, what would be, and I'm not saying lessons learned, right? What would be some of the draws to the book, like some of the adversity that you had to face and that you overcame that people might be able to relate to? I mean, obviously you want them to read the book. You want them to have you come out and speak to them, to obviously
of course
have that personal experience. And as a guy who does sales for his job during the day and who runs a podcast and a YouTube channel, of course I understand the sales portion of it, but I want them to understand Scott Harris. I mean, I want them to go read the book, but I want them to relate to you. So if we had to say, what are some of the instances that you've gone through that they can find in the book that would make you relatable. So give me some,
Okay.
give me some adversity.
Well, the biggest piece of adversity that I think a lot of people could relate to is when I was about 23 or 24, I had just won the National Collegiate Skydiving Championships, and I got a little arrogant and I was pushing my luck a little too much. I was too full of myself, and I had an accident. I shattered my left femur, broke my right tibia, broke 3 ribs, and I had a concussion.
Was that a result of
And
pulling your chute too late, or you just not tucking and rolling?
yeah, not tucking and rolling. It was a crash landing. I was jumping a square parachute that had a forward speed of about 25, 30 miles an hour. And I put myself in a bad situation. I ended up crashing it into the ground in a hook turn downwind. And the people who saw me land figured I hit the ground at about 80, which was a little tough on the landing gear. And the point of this isn't to delve into so much of how the accident happened, but that I was really hurt. And I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and I was in traction, and I learned a very serious lesson in humility, and it stuck with me. And I learned empathy for the people around me. It took a team of 5 people so I could go to the bathroom. They had to lift me up and wipe me and all the rest of that. And that was humiliating. But I learned to appreciate the people who did that. And I connected to the empathy that the caretakers had for me and for each other. And I've learned to apply that into all instances of my life going forward. And I call upon that lesson to this day. And when I have to lead others, I remember that. I remember some of those lessons, and I don't allow myself to get too full of myself or arrogant or overconfident. I have tremendous confidence. I fly airplanes. I still jump out of them. But it's always tempered with a certain level of humility and humanity, and that provides me with the measure of success that I have enjoyed.
I would have said
me.
something a little bit more like respect for, for the danger that these events pose.
The danger, the accident that I had was controllable. It was absolutely something that didn't have to happen. It happened because I took too many chances. I did not have to have that accident. I could have avoided it. It wasn't the fates that came, to conspire against me. It was my own foolishness.
So let me ask you a question. So obviously skydiving is a huge passion of yours. It's been for pretty much your almost entire life. Because you're 64, and at 24 or 23, you said this happened. So that's 40
right.
years.
I started jumping when I was 18.
Right. So, okay. So we got like 40 years on this now. Now, coming over the adversity, I mean, part of that's got to be the fear of jumping back out of a plane, though. I mean, when you spend 3 weeks in the hospital and traction and the whole 9 yards, I mean, there's got to be at some point your doctor looked at you and said, yeah, the skydiving thing's over.
Well, actually, my doctor looked at me and said, this walking thing's over.
Oh, okay. Okay. Walking things over. So
yeah, he said this walking thing's over. At least he didn't think I'd ever walk normally or without assistance again. I didn't really want to take that in stride. He told me I wouldn't go. He didn't want me to go back to school. I went back to school. It was hard. Everything was hard. I went back to school in a wheelchair. When I got well enough, I went to a public swimming pool and started swimming. And I wasn't in spite of growing up on the water, I wasn't a great swimmer. Within about 6 weeks, I was swimming a mile every day. Within 4 months of my accident, I was actually skydiving again. I did get a little bigger parachute, and I've always been a little more careful. And as I said, I learned a lesson in humility, and it has served me well.
Okay, so that's a 24. That's a personal injury. Let's talk about adversity. Your first major adversity, say, in business.
I was in a business that was paying me good money. I had a construction business, and it was paying me good money, but I was losing my own faith in what I was doing. I had a lot of great employees, and I had a couple of bad ones, and I wanted to leave where I was. I was living
Is
in
it
Los
losing
Angeles.
faith in losing faith in what you did, or is it losing the passion?
I was losing the passion for what I was doing. It was starting to not be so much fun anymore. It was there was so much hustle, and I was basically working 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, which is fine with me, except that it was too much of the same thing. It was becoming more of a drudgery. And I chose to sell the business, leave town, and start over. When I was 48, and
At
I moved to the
48, you
Pacific
decide that you're making good money. You have a successful career. I'm no longer happy at 48. Mind you, you've already said that in the beginning you didn't see yourself ever retiring, but we're going to quit at 48 and we're going to start anew.
Yep.
Okay, so we went from
I
construction,
Right.
and then how did we jump into that was supposed to be fun?
I decided to create a business. It's kind of like a home inspection business, except I inspect only commercial property. And I moved to the Pacific Northwest, where I knew a few people, but not so many. I decided to do this right before the great crash of '08.
The housing
And
crash. You decided to. You
right,
decided. So wait a minute here. Wait a minute here. So you're 48 years old. You decide
right,
I'm out. I'm selling. I'm out. And not only am I out of my business, I'm moving. You
right,
move to a very expensive area in the Northwest, because the Northwest is expensive to cost of living, property, the whole
right.
9 yards. And you're going to go start a brand new business with few to no relationships in that industry. And then the market crashes?
Well, I had planned on the market crashing, actually. I knew it was going to crash, and or at least I believed it would, and I thought it would hit later and not as hard in the Pacific Northwest than it was where I was in California. And all of that played out exactly as I predicted. I'm not saying that because I'm a big predictor, but that all worked out for me. It all played out pretty much the way I thought it would. I moved up here. I did a little construction while I was building my inspection business. The hard thing is I was building something that didn't exist. It's a rare thing. There are very few people in the country who specialize in commercial property. Lots of home inspectors, not a lot of guys that really dig deep and know commercial property. But all my industrial engineering and construction background drew me right there. That was my happy place.
I would imagine though, Scott, that's a lot less money compared to what you were making.
Not really. No, not
Really?
No, I make pretty good money inspecting property. My overhead's a lot less. I mean, I don't have 20 employees. I got me and one assistant.
Okay.
My overhead is very controllable, and my hourly rate's pretty good. It's a good deal.
So
I'm
you
making
set your
good
own.
money.
You're still setting your own schedule, working when you want to work, and
Right, which is 6 to 6, Monday through Monday.
Okay, all right. So Mondays are good for you.
Yeah.
So we're still
Yep.
doing 7
I like
days.
Mondays.
We're still doing 7 days a week. We're still hustling.
Right, but on the weekends I'm flying. I'm not. My regular business is mostly Monday through Friday, and that's marketing and arranging for public appearances and workshops and doing inspections on commercial property. And then on the weekends I'm flying, and some afternoons I'm flying.
So Scott Harris, who decides at 48, I'm going to restart, and he's going to restart at one of the worst times in real estate, decides he's going to do it, knowing
Right.
or predicting it's coming,
Right.
Now here we are, pandemic hits all these years later, and you decide you are going to lead people through this whole nonsense. So,
Right.
so we get there, we're here now. So for the people watching and listening, right, if someone was to say, hey, I want to reach out to Scott, what kind of workshop or public speaking event should they expect from you? I mean, what are we going to get?
Well, I do in-person events, usually an hour or a half hour presentation, catered to the specific audience. Most of that, the general talks are about facing challenge and how to overcome challenge. I do a specific presentation on leadership challenge, and I do workshops. The workshops that I've done so far are shorter. Are not. It's usually like a 20 or 30-minute presentation and then a breakdown for a half a day on a workshop environment over the leadership challenge to try to help new leaders or existing leaders embrace that challenge better and learn to become more effective leaders. And that's been hugely popular. I also do these things by virtual. That's the new public speaking forum now, is what we're doing right here and now.
Well, let me ask you a question, because if we're going to talk leadership, then let's talk about some of the current forms or styles of leadership that are out there today. I think we and you briefly touched upon this in some of our brief chats prior to doing this tonight. But leadership today is not the leadership it used to be. And what is your opinion in that? I personally believe that it's a whole different leadership style than what it used to be. And I think, we've gotten away from kind of accountability, even though people say it's still there. It's really not. And I think the thing
it's really not. I agree with you 100%, Don.
And
I think that we have failed, and it's not just that we're failing as a society. We're failing the people that the leaders. We're shoving people into leadership roles and giving them no tools and no support. And it's unfair to them, and it's unfair to all the people who are trying to do a good job. All the people that are trying to lead. What has often happens now and has happened in the past is people do a great job at something, and they get promoted into a leadership. They get promoted into a leadership position with no experience, and they don't really have the tools to do that job. Like, they might be a great computer programmer, and they get put in charge of 20 other programmers on a specific project. Well, they've never really led people before. They've been responsible for their own work, not somebody else's work. That's a completely different skill set.
I was about to say that too. It's not the same skill set. But with that being said, though, I mean, I think part of the problem here is corporate culture has changed, right? First off, with the older generation, you used to apprentice somebody. You used to always have somebody, no matter what, that was always going to be the person that you were going to bring up underneath you, because someday if you ever got promoted or you left or got fired, there was somebody in that department that could handle the workload.
Step in. And they'd have experience.
Right. But today's corporate
they will have been taught.
But today's corporate culture is like, wait a minute, if you have that, it's like, oh my God, someone can take my job tomorrow and do it for less money. Oh my God, it's like I'm not worth what I used to be worth. It's almost like they're fighting what they should be doing. Realistically, is
right.
Because it's a threat. It's a threat.
I think that happens a lot. They think everybody's a threat. Well, and this is being pushed by by the higher ups of corporation, and because they're not showing loyalty for the people that they have. They are replacing people with, somebody who's less expensive, because far too often we have accountants running companies, not leaders.
Well, I
And
mean,
that's
that was a
great for the short term, but it doesn't work long term. It just doesn't work long term.
yeah, but that was
They've
a big push. And I'm not saying I'm going to be exactly right on this, but that really started with the baby boomer generation after World War II. I mean,
Absolutely.
when the baby boomers stepped in and it became more about profit, and because we went through all those booming years. That's why they're boomers. They're booming years. The up and coming of the late '70s, going through the '80s, early '90s. I mean, really, putting in the work and gaining the money, and changing the rules. I mean, I'm not going to say that
Yep.
corporate America wasn't always greedy, but there was a certain, I want to say, corporate decorum that was always had, in the corporate culture, that if you were loyal, your boss would take care of you because you were footing the load that he wasn't footing, and
Right.
they wanted someone who was capable to do it. So yeah, I look at leadership today as it's the term is too broadened. It's not very well defined because everyone looks at and decided that we're going to change the meaning of words, including the term leadership and what it really entails.
I feel that more often than not, what's going on right now is they're substituting leadership for management. And the two things are not the same. They almost have nothing to do with each other. Management is autocratic and systematic, and it can be measured. And that's why it's attractive to the bean counters. You put these people in these positions, you treat them this way, you pay them this money, and this is what you get out the other end. Leadership is emotional. A leader is somebody who inspires people. That's very hard to put a dollar sign next to.
Well, let me ask a question. Because you say emotional, but sometimes I feel like people who are trying to be great leaders, they don't really understand what that term means, so they try to be good friends with their employees. And there's a difference between leading and being friendly.
Oh, there's no comparison. A leader isn't your friend. A leader is, George Patton. I mean, leaders are, stand out in history. They usually stand alone. But they're out in front of a group, and they inspire that group, and they respect the people they lead. One of the biggest things in the beginning of my workshop I talk about is the most important tools for a leader are empathy and respect. If you have empathy and respect for the people that you are trying to lead, you will be successful. Nothing else really matters. If you can maintain empathy and respect for the people that you're trying to lead, you'll be successful. You'll find a way. You will. You will support them, and you will give them what they need, and they will go through hell and back for you.
So how do you?
But
how
if
do
you don't,
so how are you, Scott, going to go into some CEO's office and be like, "Listen, man, you got a room full of managers and not one leader," and how do you expect them to change their corporate culture when thrown with that reality? Because it's a reality today for the most part. It's truly a reality.
well, they need to be. Well, part of that is because this is what I do, and I hope I do it well, is inspire people. I hope that what I can do is inspire the people that they want to be leaders to be better leaders. They have to support them in this. The corporate culture has to support them in this, but I believe that the tide is turning. I'm a bit of an optimist, but I really do believe this. I believe that the tide is turning, that people are beginning to realize that all the new ways of running things isn't always the most effective long term. A lot of this stuff that you and I have talked about now about leadership, that it's not working so well, is because that these changes are made because they work great short term. That looks good on the bottom line in a short term, but over a long period of time, it doesn't work very well. You have much more turnover of employees because the employees are dissatisfied. They don't feel like they're working. You can't expect people to work for a paycheck. It's a mistake.
So basically, what we're
to-
saying is management. If you're doing a management style, you're short sighted, because you're
Yes.
looking at the immediate gratification.
Right.
Leaders play the long game. They're looking for the bigger money, the longer goal, the stability, the less turnover. I mean, if you're going to reduce,
That's right.
if you're going to reduce
that is
numbers,
exactly what I believe.
right? If you're going to reduce numbers, we got to reduce all numbers, which is not just hey the bottom line as far as hey we got to do salaries. We can shave the bottom line by reducing turnover and the cost of turnover, which is training and everything else under the sun that we have to do along with that. There's other incentives that could be put in there. It doesn't have to be in the person's paycheck. It could be a benefit that the company could write off. People gotta, I would imagine, start thinking a little different. But in today's business style, it's just very, very difficult. But I'm glad if you can do it.
Because everybody's it's a very short news cycle. Everybody's got a short-term memory. But if you can buy into the to the longer game, leadership matters.
So when you say longer game, Scott, how what's your definition of long game or longer game?
Just you're more concerned about the future than you are the present. If you're concerned about the future of your company, as an example, then you want to have a team of management or leaders who are loyal and they inspire your employees to perform at their best level and remain in their jobs. That's the long game. Now, that's not a specific number of years, but that's the long game. That's the life of a company or an entity that goes way beyond our custodianship of that for today.
But don't you think also part of the problem, and this is just me thinking here, I'm just going back and forth with you on this, but I think
sure,
I think
devil's advocate. It's interesting.
Well, I'm just thinking part of the problem, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, and I guess we're going to have opinions on this, and that's fine. But today's world in creating a business usually starts with a business plan. Right? It usually goes from start up to sell off. They want their out. They plan for their out. So a lot of businesses today, when people do a business plan and are looking at this strategy, it's not a forever game for them. They're not planning on forever. So
short-term game. And it's easy to get people to be inspired by that big payoff of, hey, we're going to build this thing, we're going to sell it off, and you're going to get a piece of it. And they get some tremendous talent to buy into that. And they build up a company, with a great startup, and they have great success, and then they sell it off, and the company flounders because all that great talent just left. So they got paid off in the buyout, and they're off doing their own thing. Because essentially what they've done in the startup is attract a bunch of entrepreneurial type human beings who, get up every day and work their ass off all day long because that's what they do. They're excited. They push, they have drive. And it's not just about a paycheck for them. It's about their future, and their future is tied into this sell-off. We're going to create something wonderful, and there's going to be a big payday at the end. And they get these kind of people to buy into that. Essentially, all those key individuals in that startup are all individual entrepreneurs.
So I guess the best way then, in my mind, to solve this whole little dilemma is, and this is me personally, that if you're going to create a business, don't create it with the business model of I'm selling it, like I'm out. Don't put that exit in the forefront of your mind in the beginning. I think the best way to handle it is I'm in this until I'm not. Kind of like what you did. You got tired. You did your construction for what? 2 decades, 3 decades?
Yeah, 2
decades, and you just said after 20 years, okay, I'm done. But it wasn't part of your business plan, I would imagine, to be done in specifically 20 years.
It's never been part of my business plan to be done. I like new challenges. I have to admit it. And if something stops being a challenge for me, I'm going to have to move on and find another challenge. But that's my personal burden to bear.
No, but doesn't that also mean that if you take out the exit strategy from a business plan, it would change your thinking on how you're actually going to structure and operate your company?
Absolutely. It's definitely builds in much greater stability.
Not just stability, but doesn't it taken the fact that you've got to be yourself a good leader and then hire good leaders instead of, okay, I'm in this for 5, 10, 15 years until it's generating a certain dollar amount and I'm going to sell it out? Because at that point, doesn't it automatically fall into the aspect of management because you're just trying to manage this puppy to the end, your dedicated end?
Yeah, you're not trying to create something. Well, you're trying to create something, but you're already planned for the end game. You're already, your foot's halfway out the door from the time you open it.
So how does that kind of a message resonate with these presidents and CEOs and COOs? Because I mean, it's got to be kind of a slap in the face when you're looking at this going, you structured this from the beginning wrong. It's going to fail because you structured it.
It's not a happy message, but that's one of the challenges that we all face at different times in life, is to face the fact that we made a mistake. And you have to decide, when you're confronted with that, what am I going to do about it? Bemoaning the fact or denying the fact that you've made a mistake doesn't help.
Okay. So I don't want to go too far in the book because it's in the description and everyone's going to be able to find it down there. And when
sure,
I'm going to obviously be pushing it for you. But,
thank you, Don.
Of course. But I guess the thing here is this. So when we describe you as, a leadership motivational speaker, what services do you offer? So when people want to reach out to you, they know what they're reaching out to you for. So you're not a motivational coach, correct? You're not a leadership coach.
No.
What services do you do?
Well, I work with groups. I don't work with, the difference between me and a coach is I'm not really particularly interested in working with individuals. I feel that the group dynamic is more powerful and helps people learn.
Okay.
I've done a lot of training. I love training. I'm happy to work with groups of people. And that's really the big difference. Other than that, I'm a coach. I mean, but I'm not a cheerleader. I want to help people dive into what they need to do and how to get to where they want to go, how to improve themselves, how to improve their own performance at whatever they're doing, leadership or other things.
Okay. So we don't give up too much of the book, because I really want people to reach out to you because we can't fit it all here anyway. So if we had to do your 30-second elevator pitch to these companies or people, managers listening, what would be your 30-second elevator pitch to them about they should be talking to you?
I would like to have the opportunity to talk to the people in your company that are facing management and leadership challenges and help them understand that it's okay and how they can get past their own fears and be truly great leaders, to become the best leaders that they can be, and learn to face that challenge with joy and anticipation for the tremendous personal boon that being a good leader can be.
Awesome. So Scott, I want you to stick around, but we're going to end it here. So everyone who's watching the video and the live replay, thank you so much. And anyone who's listening on the podcast, thank you for sticking around to the end. We really appreciate it. Again, anyone watching the live replay in the podcast, please find all of Scott's information in the description below. And obviously, Scott, they can reach out to you and you'll be more than glad to talk to them, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So everyone, I want to thank you for watching. Scott, please stick around. But thank you so much.